Your wealth, Saturday mornings at 7.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy J this morning, Carol Roth, author, podcaster, The Roth Effect, regular Fox Business contributor, as is our next guest, the capitalist pig, Jonathan Hoenig. And on this tax day, as people who believe in free minds and free markets and free society, we want to focus on Tax Freedom Day, which in Illinois, you got to layer in the state and local too, according to the Tax Foundation, is until April 24th. So you work almost the first full 4 months of the year before you get to work for yourself.
I kind of feel like with sales tax and all of that, it's got to be more like June or July.
It feels like it. Yeah, the Tax Foundation may be undershooting it. That does put Illinois only 45th worst out of 50, New York being the worst a week later, May 3rd. But, I dispute that as well because I know Illinois has the highest state and local tax burden. But anyway, we want to talk freedom and opportunity and what we should be doing, not what we are doing. And to help us do that, we're pleased to be joined, as I said, by the capitalist pig, Jonathan Hoenig. He's the author of the new book, a new textbook of Americanism, the politics of Ayn Rand. Jonathan,
which I will plug right now, is phenomenal, and you need to have everyone you know read it.
All right, Jonathan.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Carol. Thanks for being with you. Thanks for having me be with you guys today. I don't know, do you celebrate Tax Day? I mean,
no. You send a sympathy card, Jonathan. I'm sorry for your financial loss.
Really? And Dan, your point about really the importance of noting and celebrating tax freedom and how long it takes. I mean, my God, think back to January 1st, Dan. We've been working this whole time, this entire month, 4+ months. And as you said, in here in Illinois, we're going to be working basically until May 1st. Only then, Dan, you start making literally $1 for yourself. Americans this year will spend more on taxes than on food, clothing, and housing combined, Dan. 30% of the nation's income. That's up from about 5% back in 1900. So we've got some celebration to do, but we got a lot of work to do as well if we're going to put this country back on the right track.
And yet economic times are good. And you know how I know? Because in the the upscale Chelsea neighborhood in New York, the Wilson has debuted a new menu for dogs only. Culinary director Jeff Haskell has put together the menu. 16-ounce grilled ribeye steak for $42, pan-roasted salmon for $28, grilled chicken breast for $16. Available on the patio for your dog. If you can afford to have your dog eat like you do, then things must be good.
Or better than you do for most people.
Even in high-tax New York State. So what are we complaining about?
Yeah, I mean, Dan, honestly, guys, would you rather be a dog in Lincoln Park, Chicago, or the Upper West Side of Manhattan, or a so-called rich person in a place like, North Korea or Venezuela, where there is no freedom, no capitalism, no individualism at all? And, Dan, as you said, look, no matter what your opinion is on the president, times are pretty good. This is, in fact, the second longest expansion in U.S. history. If you start the expansion, this is coming from the NBER, kind of the keeper of statistics on such matters. They say the expansion started in June 2009, so we're 118 months in and counting. Dan and Carol, that's only 2 months behind the all-time greatest expansion from 1991 to 2001. So look, these are good times. The president, I know, is crowing about it. He was on Twitter last night, in effect, saying that if the Fed hadn't been raising interest rates, the Dow would be 5,000 to 10,000 points higher. That might be a little truthful in the president's sense. But look, this economy is doing very well, and it's the freedom that propels it and will keep propelling it in this great land.
Yeah, I always joke that if this is the way that people are acting online when things are good, just imagine when the downturn happens, it's going to be absolutely horrendous. It's interesting, Jonathan, there was an article that came out in the New York Times today that had to fess up that basically almost everybody got a tax cut. 94% of Americans got a tax cut. But the other side of the coin was they said that most people didn't realize they got a tax cut, either because they got a smaller refund because they kept more of their money throughout the year or because they didn't understand the effective tax rates. Does that surprise you that people are better off today and don't actually realize that?
Well, no, it doesn't, Carol, because taxes themselves, maybe if you do them by yourselves, you use some kind of a computer program or software. I mean, can you imagine if you set out to create a more labyrinth, confusing set of arbitrary laws? I mean, back in 1900s, as I said, literally people filled out their taxes on a postcard. There wasn't this complex maze where you need to consult this ever-changing. So no, it's not surprising to me. In fact, the way so many people celebrate their refunds, Carol, you have a finance background, I know as well. We end up shaking our heads because that ends up being as we know, a risk-free or I should say an interest-free loan to the government. So taxes need to be not only reduced, but greatly simplified. I mean, we spend hundreds of billions of dollars as a country and thousands of dollars as individuals just figuring out how much we have to pay each year. That's productive,
it's
Carol.
Offensive.
Productive capital that could go into real businesses, not just figuring out how to pay one's taxes every year.
Capitalist Pig, you are a Chicago resident. And yeah, for now, right? So according to a study by WalletHub.com, which looked at 4 different types of taxation at the local level: real estate tax, vehicle property tax, income tax, and sales and excise taxes, Illinois is 51st out of 50, behind the District of Columbia as well. The only reason we're not 56 out of 50 is they didn't include the other U.S. territories. 51 out of 50, the worst state and or territory in America for taxpayers. And so just speak to that. We have the highest unfunded pension liabilities. We have the highest paid, when you adjust for cost of living, public school teachers in Chicago in the nation, for example. We have the most units of government. We have the most elected officials, despite being only the 5th or now 6th most populous state. So we have all this government. We have high-priced public sector workers with guaranteed 7-figure pensions, and we're the worst state for taxpayers. So what are we getting for our money here?
Well, Dan, shortly put, we are getting screwed. This is why what the answer does and what you and Amy and I know Carol does as well is so important. Getting the word out there that this state is on road to, and this is not hyperbolic, this is not truthful hyperbole, financial ruin, Dan, as you said. And look, you don't need to be a great student of history to know there was a time when Detroit and Michigan writ large was riding high. This state has prospered only to the effect that these wonderful businesses, everything United and Caterpillar down the line, have stayed and have agreed to continue to hire people here. But we know that there is an exodus from high-tax states, in particular Illinois. So, Dan, I think it really is a long-term problem. Look, it hurts us every month and every week as small business people, as entrepreneurs trying to just put food on the table, bring our kids to school. But long-term, Dan, it could spell real disastrous consequences for this state if those true atlases, the employers who make all this productivity and and wealth possible, when they pick up and leave, it's Katie bar the door, and we truly become the next Michigan for the next 50 years instead of the next Silicon Valley.
So, Jonathan, as an Illinois resident with a somewhat biased crystal ball, how do you think this all ends for Illinois? I mean, do you think we've never had a state go bankrupt before? So does this end in a Chicago bankruptcy? Does this end in an Illinois bankruptcy? Is there a complete changing of the guard and we find our way out of this? I mean, what's your best prediction there?
I think this needs to. I don't know how it ends, Carol, but I know how it starts with all of our listeners and rolling down the windows, sticking their head out and saying, we're mad as hell. We're not going to take it any longer. We're not going to work until May 1st just to pay off all the debts, the pension obligations, the spending that these federal, but also state and local governments have paid for. Before the politicians change, before the policies change, Carol, the people have to change. And we have to stand up and say, look, we've got to do something about this prolific spending, whether it's in education or infrastructure or any other element of where government now sticks its nose where it hasn't in the past. So we're on a financial road to ruin. And whether it's super high inflation or, really what my fear is just stagnant long-term unemployment. As we've seen, as again, I use Michigan as a not so distant example, distant in terms of time or even distant in terms of a geography. So it needn't be that case, though. We need to become more fiscally responsible in the state and city like now. Otherwise, as Dan pointed out, we're number 50 in every listing of 50 when it comes to fiscal responsibility. If that doesn't change, the state's in real trouble long term.
Nobody does a Howard Beale impersonation like Jonathan Hoenig. That was very, very good. Yeah, and well, I mean, I don't know what more there is to say about Illinois. I think I agree with you, Jonathan Hoenig, as the great Ludwig von Mises said, he who wants to improve conditions must propagate a new mentality, not merely a new institution. But what we get from the political class and from the captured electorate is just another program, another layer of government, another institution, rather than a change in mentality.
Yeah, and Dan, even something as simple as education, for example, what is always the answer for the terrible public
More
education?
money.
There it is. More money. Of course, we're not spending enough money. But even just look this last week. I mean, Netflix came along, revolutionized the way that we all enjoy entertainment. We remember some of us going to Blockbuster Video and renting videos for $9 or $10 of video. Netflix changed all that. And then, of course, last week, Dan and Carol, Disney came out and said, no, we're going to compete. We're going to start our own streaming service. It's going to cost less than Netflix, $7 a month. You get Disney on tap. Imagine if we had that kind of innovation, that kind of entrepreneurship in the public schools as just one example. My gosh, I mean, it would be a transformation, but the ideas are what have to change. That's what we do every day.
Speaking of the streaming services, I'll beat your Disney. How about if we could have people connect dots? Means TV. The Detroit couple who helped Ocasio-Cortez win her election last year, launching a pro-socialism media company from their house on the east side of Detroit. Means TV, internet-only web streaming service that for a monthly $10 subscription would offer pro-worker, anti-capitalist viewpoints. So
wait, it's not free?
That's charging a subscription, and it's even better than that. They're doing a $500,000 crowdsourcing raise.
Well, that part makes sense, right? So I understand the crowdsourcing, but then charging everybody a fee on top of it is pretty amazing.
Like even the crowdfunding is entrepreneurial,
I suppose. But you're all chipping in and bringing it together. I feel like that's at least more sort of collectivist in thinking. But that's pretty tremendous.
When are we going to get Capitalist Pig TV?
Sooner than later, but that's the irony, Dan. Right? I mean, that even somebody like Bernie Sanders, who has it's almost uncomfortable to have to watch someone apologize for being successful. Bernie says, "Oh well, I wrote a book, and that's how I became a millionaire." I mean, in America, we used to be proud of something like that, Dan. Yeah, I created something. I built that. But socialism, of course, teaches you just the opposite. You can't be proud of whatever you did because you didn't build that. You have no ownership of it.
How many millionaires, Jonathan, from North Korea and Venezuela who wrote books? Just wanted to get the running number.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, in those societies, Carol, let's forget even keeping profits, but even just being able to speak your mind. Look, we're all searching for that. How do we make this country more prosperous? How do we bring growth to a whether it's a state, city, or a country? Look, we know the answer. It's freedom, freeing up markets, freeing up individuals.
Yeah.
To live their best
but
lives.
in the Soviet Union, the puppet shows are so cheap, and they have those beautiful chandeliers.
Forget the famines, but the puppet shows are amazing.
Jonathan Hoenig, Capitalist Pig, Fox News contributor of the book, a new textbook of Americanism, The Politics of Ayn Rand, which has been recommended by Carol Roth. Capitalist Pig, Jonathan Hoenig, thanks for